Hey guys, welcome back. Joe Brunsman, insurance broker to the stars. People ask me every week, how do we put an end to ransomware? So today I'm going to talk about how I think ransomware ends. And spoiler alert, no matter who you are, I do not think you're going to like the answer that I'm about to provide to you. Before we begin, this is my latest book, Damage Control, Cyber Insurance and Compliance. That is where you can download it for free. Now, what can we do about ransomware? What are the really kind of the main narratives that are currently being pushed? Well, if you want to really take a deep dive, you can download that particular PDF. It's about 80 pages, but it's free. But here's what I see being said so far. Hey, why don't we just hunt these guys down? Well, one, attribution is incredibly difficult. Just even trying to find who these people are is very, very hard. Two, would that material, once we found them, be admissible in court? That's another big question. Three, how much does it cost to even hunt these people down? And four, they're probably from a nation state that's either A, at least tacitly supporting them, or B, from a state that doesn't have an extradition treaty to the United States, so we can't even go in and get them, even if we spent a phenomenal amount of time and money figuring out who these people are. So very, very difficult problem. Maybe we could create a national cybersecurity law so we could just try and eliminate the problem from the other end. Well, one, we actually already have a national cybersecurity law. You can read about that in my book. Various states already have cybersecurity laws. Various sectors of our economy already have cybersecurity laws. So highly unlikely that's going to work. It hasn't worked so far. Even trying to enforce those laws is incredibly expensive and time consuming. And frankly, if we did, say, force every business to map to a framework and at least have fundamental controls, that would be incredibly expensive. And frankly, we just don't even have enough cybersecurity professionals in the United States to even begin attempting to do something like that. Hey, maybe we could make paying the ransom illegal. Well, it sounds good, but then, think of yourself as a business owner. You have to put food on the table for your family, as well as provide for other individuals to put food on the table for their families. So if it comes down to, say, a $10,000 ransom versus your entire life's work being wiped out, how do you think that's really going to play out? I would argue that many, many people are going to continue paying the ransom because the ransomware, honestly, it is that good. So what do I think the ultimate solution to this problem is going to be? And like I told you before, I'm not necessarily happy with this, and I don't think you will either. I think it's going to be banning cryptocurrencies on the national and international stage, and I'm going to tell you some of the other things going on currently at a macroeconomic level that are going to facilitate that particular banning. Now, before we get too deep into this, please do not shoot the messenger. I am not a hater of cryptocurrencies. As a matter of fact, I've actually been published in this book right here. And if you want to talk about fiat currency systems, if you want to talk about fractional reserve banking, if you want to talk about the constitutional constraints and the deep-seated historical rationale for why the founding fathers likely put those in there, hey, I'm your guy, right? I think there's actually, you could really argue that there's a moral component to cryptocurrencies as well. And hey, I'm on board with that. So don't shoot the messenger. I am a business owner. I have to pay taxes. I'm no fan of Keynesian economic theory. I'm no fan of inflation being a tax on my savings account, trying to be responsible for my family. I'm not a fan of modern monetary theory or any of these wacky ideas that these so-called economists really think. I'm a Milton Friedman guy. I'm a Chicago School of Economics guy. I think what we're doing to our economy is absolutely insane in many, many regards. So please do not shoot the messenger here. So let's look at why cryptocurrency even came about. I think you could really argue that there is a moral component to this, but there's also practical things like Bitcoin, right? Deflationary, people lose Bitcoin. So at least in theory, over time, it has to gain value. Privacy concerns that individuals have. You could have ideological concerns. So people like myself who are talking about fiat currency systems and what that really does to society, right? There could be an ideological component there. A business case where it's just hey, the ease of payments, pulling that middleman out of the equation. You could have a business component there, especially if you're paying across state lines or you're paying across borders. And then historically, you really kind of had two checks on macroeconomics, right? Those two macroeconomic constraints were inflation and debt sustainability. And those apparently, as of lately, have just completely gone out the window. I mean, where are the adults saying, hey, we can't just keep printing money forever. Bad things will happen. We know how this ends. I know we've got Thomas Sowell out there. He's talking about it. But at least in the upper echelons of government, it seems as though there may be grumblings, but there's kind of this tacit agreement that it'll just keep on keeping on. And I think we all know, anybody who is even a passing fan of economic history will tell you this is going to end very poorly. And all of these are reasons why cryptocurrencies were actually created to begin with. Now, there's a larger looming problem that I think everybody needs to be aware of here. So that's people who are holding crypto, people who are fans of cryptocurrencies. There's a larger looming problem. And this problem is right on the horizon. And this is going to have a big impact on why I think cryptocurrencies will be banned and how that will actually end ransomware. Let's talk about inflation real fast. What is it right now, actually, in real life, and what is the forecast? So, any of my fellow people out there who are watching this, if you've gone to the grocery store, you're probably going, wait a minute. If the Fed is forecasting that we're at, say, like 3 or 4% inflation, that's outrageous because my food costs have definitely gone up more than 3 or 4%. So kind of fun fact here when they're actually calculating inflation, two things that don't get put in, building materials. So the cost of a new home on average is going up $35,000 just because of material costs, and they don't factor in food. So there you go. So if you actually look at something like Shadow Stats here, an actual phenomenal website, you can see that as of May 12th, they had the real inflation rate actually more around like, say, 12 or 13%. And we could argue that, say about a month later, we're probably closer to about 15%, all things being said. Now, what's the forecast? Well, this is from Deutsche Bank's global head of research. One bank goes apocalyptic. Inflation is about to explode, quote, leaving global economies sitting on a time bomb. So when you combine QE and low interest rates, there's really just not a lot that a central bank can even do. A lot of the tools that they had at their disposal, courtesy of Keynesian economics, those have really just kind of been whittled away. So there's really not a lot of room for central banks to maneuver. Now you can look here. This is the M1 money stock. And if you look at the beige part on the right-hand side of your screen, you will see this just absolutely ridiculous exponential increase in the amount of money that is in supply at the current moment. And just think about kind of basic supply and demand, the fundamental rule of all economics, right? The more supply you have, the less demand you're going to have. So what does that mean? Well, back when I was a kid, you could still buy a candy bar for like $1. And now it's like $2. Why? Because there's just more money being circulated. Inflation has taken away a lot of the value of the dollar. As a matter of fact, the inflation that we already have, and this was before this massive spike in the money supply, we had actually inflated our currency more than the Romans had before their economy collapsed. So kind of just something to keep in mind there. And what actually happens during hyperinflation, and I promise all of this is coming back to cryptocurrency, you get black market currencies that rival the currency of whatever host country is currently experiencing hyperinflation. So you'll see countries like Venezuela, Lebanon, Syria, Zimbabwe using US dollars, using Pokemon cards, using cryptocurrencies. And of course, central banks around the world know this. Central banks and countries in general are just in phenomenal amounts of debt. So in the US right now, I believe the official number is something like $27 trillion, which is almost comical to even say. But when you start bringing in unfunded liabilities, like Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security. The numbers vary, but you're looking at somewhere around $200 trillion. So almost 10 times the official published amount of debt. I mean, it's just a phenomenal amount of debt. Now, of course, whenever there's hyperinflation, the poor get crushed first. Why? So if the cost of living is going up, let's say 10% this year, and the poor are already living paycheck to paycheck, cost of living goes up, cost of food goes up 10%. They may not eat that day. They may not be able to pay their rent that month. They just get absolutely crushed. And then, of course, the wealthy can come in and hoover up all of those assets. So all of this is to say we have just been beyond irresponsible with our really just our economy and our fiscal system as a whole. It's very hard for me to tell you how phenomenally irresponsible we've been. Nonetheless, if you want to see what the smart money is doing right now, they're getting out of the dollar, which is going to lead to hyperinflation. BlackRock, just go look up BlackRock real estate purchasing and read that story about how they're just hoovering up. I mean, just thousands and thousands of homes and real estate all across the country. Now, to quote Andrew Jackson, and this is really how all of this ties together, money is power. What do I mean by that? Money, we have used the US dollar following World War II as really a cudgel on the world scene to implement our foreign policy. So that could be through sanctions, that could be through the petrodollar, through OPEC, the Cold War, where we just essentially outspent the Soviet Union and bankrupted them. We are the world's reserve currency. That's the only reason we've been able to be this irresponsible. So yes, other countries have been irresponsible too. And in the closet of ugly sweaters to wear on date night, we are the least ugly sweater. But eventually, bills come due and someone's going to have to pay the bill. So keep that in mind. Next, it's a method to control the domestic economy. And excuse me, and that's courtesy of Keynesian economic theory. So all you have to do is just really think about, hey, all of those stimulus checks that keep getting pumped out over and over and over again, it's a method to control the domestic economy. What do you think would have happened if they would have shut all these businesses down and they didn't send those checks out? I mean, you'd be talking about just revolt in the streets, frankly. Think about Congress. Do you really think that Congress is going to just go quietly into the night without that good fight, where suddenly their ability to dole out money to special interest groups, all of those lobbying firms out there, do you really think that they're going to give up that amount of control? And then think about just practically, if the dollar falls, if the dollar is no longer the world's reserve currency, you're talking about global economic turmoil, the likes of which the world has frankly never seen before. Demand for treasuries would plummet. Interest rates would just go through the roof. I mean, if you wanted to borrow any money, you're talking about like mafia type interest rates. You would have massive volatility. You would have, I mean, really just massive poverty, potential starvation on a scale that would be apocalyptic, to be honest with you. So at the end of the day, you have to think, could cryptocurrencies actually rival the US dollar? Yes, they could. Is there a moral component to why they should do that? Yeah. Should Congress actually have their reins pulled in so they stop this insane economic policy where they're funding millions and hundreds of millions of dollars of projects overseas so that they can get their local constituency happy if they're from that particular part of the world? Yes, they should. That being said, I don't think they're going to let this go without a fight. Now, ransomware, I think, is going to be the convenient fall guy. I don't think that the people who have been running our country for the last 20, 30 years, who have inflated our money into oblivion, and we are now on the precipice of hyperinflation, I don't think that they're going to just magically own up to this and say, hey, you know what? As it turns out, we've been amazingly irresponsible with what we've been doing, and we've been funding all of these pet projects. And you know what? The bill has come due, and sorry, American public, you're just going to have to live with the consequences. I don't think that's going to happen. What do I think is going to happen? I think ransomware is going to be the convenient fall guy that they're going to use to try and get out of this situation. So you'll already see here, the ransomware problem is a Bitcoin problem. Want to stop ransomware attacks? Ban Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. Ban cryptocurrency to fight ransomware. Stop clapping for Tinkerbell. Ban cryptocurrency and rein in ransomware attacks. Senators urge crackdown on crypto as ransomware payment after gas pipe meat plant hacks. Ex-SEC Internet Enforcement Chief says crypto investors are, quote, enabling, end quote, ransomware attacks. So I also think they're going to hit cryptos from the other side, just to make sure that both sides of the aisle would find this palatable. And the other side of the aisle is going to use global warming. That's going to be the icing on the cake. And we're already seeing it here. Bitcoin emissions alone could push global warming above 2 degrees centigrade. Bitcoin is an incredibly dirty business. This is a virtual money with a real carbon footprint. Bitcoin's growing energy problem. It's a dirty currency. Bitcoin's effect on global warming. So all of that being said, could you make a logical argument that, hey, we're actually using renewable energy to mine cryptocurrency? Yeah, you can make that argument. That's already been made courtesy of Tesla. And that whole debacle was over there. Could you make the argument that, hey, you know what, ransomware is a very small percentage of what cryptocurrencies are being used for? Sure. But we have all these other deep-seated macroeconomic issues that we need to contend with as well. And there's already international grumbling. So you'll see in the states, the nation states in front of you, they're already talking about banning cryptocurrencies, severely limiting cryptocurrencies, taxing cryptocurrencies, et cetera, et cetera. Now, will the public actually care if we ban cryptocurrencies? Maybe you're holding cryptocurrency right now and you're like, this is absolutely outrageous. Do I think the public at large will care? Probably not most. And why is that? Think about narratives. Politics at the national and international level is all about narratives. We are good, they are bad. Think of it like that. Here's what we're going to start seeing. Cryptos are a national security risk. Hey, Bitcoin enables ransomware. We're already seeing that in these articles. Remember that time you didn't have gas? You couldn't take your kid to school. You couldn't get to work because Colonial Pipeline got shut down because of ransomware. Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. Remember that time that you couldn't afford meat for your family? You couldn't go to that barbecue. You couldn't go out to eat because there just wasn't any meat out there. Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. That's going to be the narrative. Hey, remember that time your life was destroyed because of identity theft? You remember that time? Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. These are going to be the narratives moving forward that will obfuscate the complete lack of responsibility with our economic system and our currency. They're going to be using this moving forward. And what percentage of what percentage of people actually own cryptocurrencies? Well, arguably less than 50%. And if you're a politician, that is the magical number. At the end of the day, it's going to be, mom's going to be sitting there and she's going to go, okay, well, you know what? We have to have security and we have to have stability. Think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. What is the average person going to default to? They're going to default to security and stability. And if it comes down to, hey, I got to have gas in my car, we got to keep the lights on, we can't have the national infrastructure at risk because of ransomware, because that could have adverse effects on my family, we got to keep the heat on in winter, that's not something that we should worry about, then if it comes to, hey, banning cryptocurrencies, at least private cryptocurrencies, I think we understand how the average person would take such a proclamation from the government. Now, you're probably saying, hey, this could never even happen, right? Like, there's no way at the end of the day that the government could even do something of this magnitude. Well, unfortunately, you would be wrong. So let's look back at Executive Order 6102. And this is going to sound crazy. I was born in 85, as probably were most of you watching this video looking at my video metrics. So in 1933, FDR effectively banned the private ownership of gold. And ostensibly, the party line here was it was because hoarding had stalled the economy and this was worsening the Great Depression. We're actually seeing right now people are hoarding dollars, as a matter of fact. Now, penalties, in today's dollars, roughly $200,000 penalty if you were found hoarding gold, and up to 10 years in prison. And the vast majority of gold that was actually turned back in at an established rate, that was voluntarily surrendered. You may think that's insane if you're watching this video. You're like, why wouldn't you just bury it in your backyard? Well, the majority was just voluntarily surrendered. So think about that in terms of cryptocurrency. Private ownership of gold, and this is nuts, wasn't legal again until the Ford administration in 1974. And of course, we were not the only country to do this. Australia also did it in 1959 and Britain in 1966. Think about the Patriot Act, possibly the greatest infringement on privacy and personal sovereignty in the history of the United States. Guess what? Those programs are still going, even after Edward Snowden really kind of put them out to the world that this was occurring. It's still going on. It's still going on. So don't fall into the trap to say, hey, this could never happen here. We're the United States. Worse things, I would argue, actually have happened. Now, what's going to be the solution to all this? The dystopian nightmare that is Fedcoin. And this is not going to be fun. So my prognosis is that this will replace the current currency, the US dollar as we know it, and possibly at a discounted rate like we've already seen with gold back in the 30s to try and curb that inflation, because obviously the powers that be are not just going to own up to the fact that they have been so miraculously irresponsible with our economy and our financial system. You could have automatic sales tax with every transaction. You could have the instant ability to audit, seize, and freeze people's money. And it would be an easy way for, let's say, law enforcement to circumvent banks or the legal system. And government transparency, I think, is going to be the catchphrase at the end of the day. So it's, hey, we're going to have this blockchain, and you could see every single dollar that's being spent out there. And it's going to just be this miraculous great currency. And oh, by the way, if we institute Fedcoin, then we don't have to worry about ransomware payments because we're going to ban cryptocurrencies. We're going to bring in Fedcoin. And if somebody tried to pay in Fedcoin, well, that's just not going to work. How do we know that's not going to work? Well, before cryptocurrency, how many ransomware events were there? Not that many. So Janet Yellen has already said that Fedcoin will be faster, safer, and make for cheaper payments. So really kind of that shout out to the lower rungs of the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You'll see here, digital dollar exploration gets backing from Treasury Secretary Yellen. This was in February of 2021. And you will see right here, this is from BIS. And BIS is essentially, it's the Bank of International Settlements. It's like the central bank for all central banks around the world. Rise of the central bank digital currencies, drivers, approaches, and technologies. This is well underway at the current moment. So if you want an interesting read, just download that PDF. Now you're probably sitting there going, well, hey, what about insert technical solution to the cryptocurrency ransomware problem? You're thinking, hey, there are ways that we could ultimately solve this problem. Well, one, nations play on emotions, but they work on logic. And the big thing you're going to have to overcome is something that is almost insurmountable, at least in the short term, and that is massive inflation and potential global economic meltdown. So before you think that there's a technical solution to this problem, I think you're looking at the wrong problem. You're looking at ransomware as the driver for this, whereas ransomware is ultimately just going to be an ancillary portion of it. It's really going to be inflation and pulling back the dollar on the world scene. Ransomware is just going to be the fall guy for all of this. Now, all of this is to say, to wrap all this up, because it's almost 20 minutes here, cryptocurrencies really do have the capability to rival a dollar, and I would say they really even have the moral authority to rival the dollar and centralized currencies around the world. But governments are going to do absolutely everything in their power to avoid losing the dominance of their own currency, because that is where a lot of their power actually resides, is in being able to control the printing of money on a national level. Ransomware, as I said, is going to be the fall guy to make this move. Global warming concerns, that's going to be the alternative narrative here. Fedcoin is going to be the replacement for the dollar that will, at least ostensibly, end ransomware. So what do I think? I think all cryptos will go to zero or near zero, at least for a while. That's not to say that people aren't going to, at least metaphorically, bury their crypto in their backyard or lose it in a boating accident. But I think cryptocurrencies are going to be banned, at least private cryptocurrencies, and they will go to near zero, at least for a while. Now, I'll leave you with two quotes here that I find particularly useful. The first is from Sir Edmund Burke. People never give up their liberties, but under some delusion. And next, from my all-time favorite economist, Milton Friedman, economic freedom is an indispensable means towards the achievement of political freedom. All right, with that, if you found this video useful, please like, share, comment, and subscribe. Tell me all the ways you think I'm wrong in the comments below. Right above me, you will see another video that I've made. And if you look over that way, if you click on my beautiful face, or at least my wife says I'm beautiful, you can subscribe to this channel. New video every Thursday. All right, with that, stay safe.